Today our topic is going to be limiting factors. Our address standard is going to be able to model the relationship between limiting factors and carrying capacity. So it looks like we're going to be trying to tie together both these limiting factors and carrying capacity, which we spoke of when we were talking about population growths. All right. So limiting factors, as the name might suggest, they might be things that limit how large or how small the carrying capacity or population size of any given living thing might be. Please take a few moments, read through these sub-objectives, and rate yourself 1 through 5 for the beginning of class. As you read through this, if you rank yourself at a 1, that is essentially saying that you have never heard of environmental factors or carrying capacity within a population. A 2 would be you might have heard of some of this stuff, but you really couldn't talk about it. It's just something that you heard of before. A 5 would be you have heard it, you know it, you could take a test right now on it, and you would score 100%. So please take a moment, go through these first 3, and then we'll proceed. You may want to pause the video to do this. So as we go through, we're going to be marking the text. We're going to be circling words that we don't know, highlighting new vocab terms that are related to biology. You'll want to take any notes you have for yourself in the left side over here, questions you may have over on this side, and underneath each paragraph a 1-sentence summary. For the questions really can come in one of 3 formats. They could be questions tied to something that you do not understand. The question could be, now that you know what you just read, what else do you want to know? Or the question could be simply a review question. So you've read it. This first paragraph talks about exponential and logistic growth, carrying capacity, and limiting factors. You could write a review question over here. So those would be the 3 types of questions that you could write. So circling, highlighting, notes, questions, and then underneath a 1-sentence summary. So let's go through. We previously learned about how population size changes. We talked about that the past few days. During periods of exponential growth, the population has an abundance of resources. Okay, there's a word we might not know, so we're going to underline that. The population has food for everyone. There are no or very few predators to eat the population. There is plenty of space, so there is no crowding. There is shelter for all, etc. When we compared exponential growth to logistic growth, we learned that populations do tend to grow exponentially for a little while. But eventually, those resources start to put pressure on the growing population. There's something that's interesting. Pressure. What do they maybe mean by pressure on the population? Perhaps there are so many individuals in the population that not all will get food. Oh, there's a source of pressure. Looks like individuals not getting food, they're going to get pressurized to get food. Maybe there are no more places to provide shelter. Okay, there's another form of pressure. If there is no shelter, organisms have pressure to survive outside without shelter. In this case, things in the environment limit the number of individuals that can receive the necessary resources to stay alive. Resources, there seems like a key term maybe. Resources to stay alive. So if a resource is something to stay alive, it sounds like to me this term means anything that something that is alive needs in order to not die. This level or number of individuals an environment can support is what we learned yesterday to be called the carrying capacity, and the environmental conditions that limit the size of the population are known as limiting factors. Okay, so here we have limiting factors. That is new. And it looks like limiting factors are things that are in the environment. So we could connect those two. Environmental conditions are limiting factors. Please take a moment, take down any notes to the left that you might need, write down the question off to the right, and please summarize all of this in the space provided in one sentence. Do not give me more than one sentence. Please pause the video while you take care of these three things. Next paragraph. As previously stated, limiting factors prevent a population from going beyond the carrying capacity. Limiting factors are characterized into two groups: density dependent limiting factors and density independent limiting factors. Recalling our discussion on the density of a population, which we spoke of the past few days with carrying capacity, or how many individuals are in a specific place, that would be density, we define the number of individuals of a species that live in the specific area. Actually, right there, that's our definition of density. For example, we can measure the density of people that live in Phoenix. So how many people live in Phoenix? We have determined that the specific area of Phoenix and the population of Phoenix in the year 2016 was 1.6 million people. So the density of the city of Phoenix in the year 2016 was 1.6 million people. Once again, please underline words that you do not know, highlight key vocabulary tied to this lesson. Looks like we at least have a couple with density dependent and density independent. Take notes off to the left, one question off to the right, and summarize what's going on in this paragraph right below in one sentence. As before, pause the video while you do that. Next paragraph. The term density-dependent limiting factors refers to any environmental condition, so something in nature, that only prevents population growth when the population is high. In other words, these factors, they depend, they must have a large population. Examples of density-dependent limiting factors include competition, predation, parasitism, and disease. It makes sense if you think about it. If a population is small, two organisms, they do not need to fight over food. They do not need to compete. If there is no food available and you are a predator, your population won't grow. That's predation. If the population is small, it makes it really difficult for germs to be spread around, which would be disease. As before, underline words you do not know, highlight terms related to biology. Give me one sentence off to the right that might be in the form of a question, a summary beneath, and notes off to the left. Last paragraph. On the other hand, the term density independent limiting factors are any environmental condition, so they're something to do with nature, and these prevent a population from growing regardless if the population is small or large. In other words, these factors are independent, meaning they do not depend on a large population. Examples include weather, natural disasters, human activities. So thinking about this, if there is a volcanic eruption, a natural disaster, that volcanic eruption will happen if there are 1 million deer living in the forest or if there's 2 deer living in the forest. Either way, small or large population, that disaster is going to happen. It is independent because the size of populations living there, they are completely irrelevant and do not matter. To explain unusual weather, consider if you were a fish in a shallow pond and there was a severe drought, meaning there's not a lot of rain coming down. The pond, it would dry you up the fish, and you would not survive. The drought was independent on the size of the fish population. That drought, or lack of rain, it would have happened if there was 20 million fish or none at all. An example of a natural disaster would be a volcanic eruption, which I just kind of explained. It happens suddenly and can kill a lot of things all at once. It would have happened if the population was large or small. Along the same line of thought, human activities, such as us cutting down forests, that would be a human activity, without much regard or concern or care for what happens to the animals that live there. We are going to cut down those trees regardless or anyway. As before, highlight words you think are related to biology, underline words you are unfamiliar with, notes off to the left, a question off to the right, and a one-sentence summary beneath. Once you have finished this and you're set with your annotations, proceed to the next page.